friends with. He probably doesn't like me because I pushed back on him. There's a video of him screaming like he loves to do about how free everybody is in El Salvador, which is incredibly so far from the truth. Insanely so far from the truth. I had to push back. I've been on Twitter today probably 5, 6 hours responding to the insane amounts of responses I got. How El Salvador is so much better because of Bitcoin. No, El Salvador is better because a man who decided he likes Bitcoin cracked down in an authoritarian way and threw anybody with a tattoo on their face in jail. And I'm going to guess statistically there's a couple people that are innocent.
Surfer Jim, thank you so much for joining me today, being a playable character in the sea of non-playable characters. So I know we're coming a little bit remote. You are on the road, but we're gonna talk about freedom, a little bit of freedom today, and making sure we're living up to our own standards. So thank you for joining me today, sir.
Hey, thanks for the invite. If it's about Bitcoin, I could talk all day. So, what do you got?
We know Jim's here, so I guess right there, you're at every conference. I mean, you just came back from El Salvador, which we'll talk about in a minute. You're now in Dallas for BitBlock Boom. You are all over the place. You're volunteering all the time. You're always helping out. Your heart's the size of a Mack truck of BJ Dichter's rig he drives around. It's that big.
That's very
Where
kind.
does the generosity come from?
Oh, okay. It's totally self-serving. I'm just trying to get ahead, and I figure if I volunteer a little, no, it comes. Actually, there's a little bit of truth to that. I can't deny figuring that. Well, if I help people, maybe I don't look for anything, and I'm not keeping score, but it is how it works. If you go out of your way to help somebody, they may go out of their way to help you one day, and you don't know when it's going to come back, and you don't keep score. You let the universe work it out, and I have a passion for certain things, and I hate to see people struggling. I've been to conferences enough times, come in a little early. I go check out where's it going to be held. I see people running around, cleaning up, fixing up, doing things. I'm like, well, I got nothing to do. The thing starts tomorrow. Let me see if I could help. That's how it started. And you meet people little by little, and one guy offers this, that, or the other thing. And there was a point where Gary said to me, Jim, I could really use a guy like you. I feel like I don't have time to talk to people, and because I'm running around trying to keep everything on schedule. And boy, if I had a guy like you around, I guess I don't know. Again, I helped out enough. Maybe he could see my work ethic. I'm not quite sure, but he asked me if I'd be willing to help. I come to the thing for free, so that's a big expense I don't have to pay for. I still pay for my hotel and my airline flights, but it's a decent trade-off because so much of the time at these events is a social aspect. I mean, if I got to work for 8 hours during a conference day, that's the rest of the time I'm here, days ahead and days behind that. It's all free, hanging out with all my friends. So to me, it's a small price to pay. And honestly, it's not hard work. I've volunteered at Pacific Bitcoin 2 years in a row. I've worked at Unconfiscatable a bunch of different years, various stuff. This will be my second year working at BitBlock Boom, and um, I actually last year after I did it, I th- I said to people, and I even felt this way that my conference experience was enhanced. I was running around. He asked me to coordinate all the speakers. That's kind of an interesting job. They all have to interact with me. I have to have conversations with them. I got to run around constantly looking for them, asking people, "Hey, have you seen this guy or that guy?" So my forced interaction was directed by the goal I was trying to resolve to find somebody. I had to find people I had never met before and wasn't even sure what they looked like. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but it was fun. It was like a kind of a fun thing. I actually, so this is a little weird side story. So my friend X Frog, who runs the audio here, he gave me a portable loudspeaker and a microphone, and I took it out in the lobby, and I started using it to usher people back into the room when after a break, and I'd be like, "Yo, folks, let's not have an empty room for the next speaker. Come on, get out of here, get back in the room." And people would laugh at me, but I had fun doing it. I felt like I'm a little in charge. Let me let me flex my power here. like a politician. No, no. My experience was enhanced by it. Right, it really was. I had fun doing it, so it didn't feel like work. And so I'm like, yeah, might as well keep doing this stuff. So, a long answer to a short question. Sorry.
No, and you do. I mean, you've got a good personality for it. It's like some people don't have the personality for that. Like where you have, you're just kind of a leader by nature. You kind of have that. People kind of listen to what you say, and it's just some people have it, some people don't. So that's people can tell you mean what you're saying. So it's very very cool that you do that, and I know everyone loves seeing you, and I'm sure I know all the the conferences love you helping out, and like you said, taking control and doing stuff. So we all appreciate. We're all lucky to have you. Um,
Do you know what I do for a living?
I was just going to ask you to the great segue because I was just going to ask entrepreneur, surfer,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
want you to elaborate on that because I don't know if many people know exactly what you do. To be totally honest, I think they just think you surf all day long, Jim.
I wish I could. Maybe one day. I am going to be in my 50th year of surfing this year. Um,
Wow.
and never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, but I guess I fit the description. I started my own construction company 35 years ago, and so I have to be a leader. If I'm not in charge, nothing's getting done. So you learn to lead. You learn to lead in a respectful way so that the people you're trying to lead voluntarily cooperate. I believe that interactions between people should always be voluntary. And if you're going to have workers, you want them to come and actually volunteer their best effort. So you have to create conditions that they actually want to. And it's a challenge. I'm trying to run a profitable business. So, it's not good if I lose money. Um, and it's not good if I lose workers because I give them crappy conditions to work under or broken down tools or whatever. So, if you're going to be a leader, you got to know, all the right elements, I guess, and it's worked out pretty good. And I've also recognized that I'm a teacher. It took me a while to really accept that, but I have to constantly teach different workers, subcontractors, my customers, and my suppliers um, to help me solve the problems that are whatever the job, whatever's involved in the job. Just as a quick aside, a very unique job I'm doing right now, where we took a house, a one-story house, we picked it up 20 feet in the air, and we built the first floor under it and put it on top. That's not a common job, and it's the average person wouldn't even know where to start. And I have a good amount of experience lifting houses. I actually used to have a house lifting company for many years, and I've lifted dozens of houses, and they're all different, and there's a whole procedure to it. But coordinating it all, nobody on my crew would know what to do, so I have to lead, but I also have to, be able to anticipate and put out fires because no job goes perfect. There's always something that you didn't anticipate or whatever. So it's a lot involved, but yeah, I found myself being a teacher over the years, and I guess that's where I found myself in Bitcoin. And I will say this too, and I've said this on many podcasts. When I was a kid growing up, I had a natural curiosity to want to know how things worked inside. And I grew up in an analog world. There wasn't a lot of digital of anything. So I would
Yeah.
take my record player apart or the cake mixer that was broken that my mother threw in the garbage, and I yelled at her for throwing it away because I want to see inside of it. So I took Bitcoin apart, like on a technical level as much as I could, because well, my third touch learning about Bitcoin was a woman on a TED Talk who said you could trust the Bitcoin protocol without trusting the people in it. And I had to find out what that meant because my entire business is built on trust. I've never had a website, I've never advertised, I've been steady busy for 35 years because my customers love me and they recommend me all the time. So I had to take Bitcoin apart from a mental, technical point of view so that I could understand the working parts inside so that I could decide if I really could trust it. And, not trying to understand that statement that woman made. So I spent
Right.
6 months. And I spent 6 months watching the price triple in 2017 before I bought any because I didn't know. Scammy
Right.
internet money. But once I understood the technical angle, it was very clear to me how it worked. And I don't think most people take that course to try to understand, but I did, and it made all the difference because as soon as I could understand it, I could then articulate it to other people who were misled or confused about, what a blockchain is or whatever. and I'm still constantly pushing back on people who definitely really don't understand it, but they just think they do. And it's, whatever. It is what it is. I'm doing the best I can to put out truthful signal. And I tell everybody, do not trust me. If you're listening to this right now, do not trust me, Brandon, anybody else. Go out and verify. We say it in Bitcoin all the time. Don't trust, verify. And so, hopefully, if I'm wrong, somebody will call me out on it, and I will humbly apologize. Hopefully, I'd like to think I would. So yeah, it's a crazy wild ride. But anyway, I don't want to direct this whole conversation. I'll let you continue whatever questions you
Oh,
brought.
like I was telling you offline, I could listen to you for hours. You are a teacher,
Oh,
so
that's
I
very
can confirm.
generous.
I spend a lot of time listening to Jim talk on Spaces, or just spending time together on Spaces in the digital
Yeah,
world for the last few years. And you're a great teacher, and you know your history. You have a lot of wisdom and experience, which is something that it's not. There's not a ton of wisdom and experience in the Bitcoin world, in the sense that there's a lot of younger people, right? So just by that very nature, you're not going to have a limitless experience, life experience. So that's why
yeah,
I think people like you, the Larry Lepards, the David Foley's, about the Bob Burnett's. There's so many of you, or I shouldn't say so many. There are a fair amount of you that I think are we'd be wise to heed what you say and listen to you very carefully, because I think those are the people. Again, as you know, Bitcoin's a humility test, not an IQ test, and I think that
yeah.
the humility to live your life for whatever 50, 60, 70, 80 years, and then be able to say, you know what, maybe there is a different way. That's the epitome of humility, and I just think you have it in spades, and some of you guys have it in spades. That's why I love listening to some of you guys talk and teach.
Well, that's super generous of you, and I really appreciate it. And I just want to bring as much truth to this discussion as possible. And I've now found that, well, I've decided this is kind of like my mission for the rest of my life here. I think Bitcoin's too important not to tell the whole world about. And to the extent that someone hears my voice and they might stop and think about it and maybe it changes their life, then I've done my job, so to speak. And oddly enough, on the plane from El Salvador up to Dallas, I sat next to a Spanish woman and her son who spoke good enough English that we had a really long conversation about Bitcoin. And
Oh wow.
guaranteed they are going home and they're doing their homework because they asked a lot of great questions and I answered them and they went, "Really? Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know." Over and over again. So, and that
Wow.
was like I didn't see that coming, but they asked me the questions. I'll answer them all day long. So it was pretty cool.
We want to thank our sponsor. This show is presented by Bitcoin Trading Cards, an orange pill in a pack, making talking about things that normally make you want to cry fun and easy. The scarcest and most educational cards to ever exist. Available now.
Wow. That is so cool. So you touched on something a minute ago, which we're gonna shelve for the moment. We'll get back to it. But in this real estate vein, I didn't know you. I knew you were in building, and building, whether it was building homes or just construction. But I didn't know that you had the house raising business, and that's incredible. But you wrote an article on Citadel 21 that I would love for you to kind of touch on, Bitcoin as real estate, and this is something that it gets talked about here and there. I don't think enough, really. I mean, you have some people, you've written about it. I know I've seen a few people write about it over time for sure, but it is really interesting. Like, real estate's looked at as kind of, probably one of like the top things on the fiat Titanic. Like, it's like the biggest thing you can do in that fiat world, in the fiat matrix. It's the hardest, maybe the most experience. You can infinite returns. Like, I did it for 10 years, and not in your world, but helping people buy and sell, investing, raising money. But you're still on the fiat Titanic, and you're still going to end up 12,000 feet under the Atlantic,
Hmm.
and so Bitcoin being that life raft, a new monetary system. Could you elaborate on that article that you wrote in Citadel 21, and just your kind of the way you look at real estate versus Bitcoin?
Sure. So I have to give credit to a man who has basically disappeared from the Bitcoin space, Trace Mayer. Anybody who was around a bunch of years ago, he was very influential, very smart man. I learned a lot from him. But he went out with a reputation of a scammer a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I'll let people do their own research. But he said the words Bitcoin. Get yourself some Bitcoin real estate or something offhanded. I thought, wow, it's a really cool analogy. And first thing I did was I did a tweet thread, and then I saw, I think I saw a request for articles for Citadel 21, and I was following Huddlenut, and he was following me, so we were friendly on Twitter. And I'm no writer, honestly. Well, I write contracts all the time for my business, and I write tons of emails, so I can write, but I'd never consider myself a writer. But I decided to take my tweet thread and expand it into an article. But what I did was I went out and did some research, internet research. I wanted to see how many people were on the planet, how many acres of land were on the planet. I started to realize that, well, a lot of land is completely unusable for living. Most people aren't living on mountain peaks or in swamps. And so there's only so much usable land. And of that, a lot of it's used for farming. So then again, you cut down to the amount of livable land. And I thought, well, how much land would each person get if you chopped it up and gave a piece to every person on the planet, 8 billion people? And I think the number was like around 2 acres, 1.8 acres, and that seemed like a lot. I mean, I grew up on a quarter acre of
Yeah.
land, and it seemed like big enough. And some people live on way smaller than that. And uh, and of course, Bitcoin is limited, right? So I did the math, and I said, okay, 21 million Bitcoin. How many are lost? Let's say 4,000, 4 million are lost, whatever. Came down to maybe, I think I used the number 18 million Bitcoin, split up between 8 billion people, and I think it comes out to 235,061 sats per person, or some weird number like that. And I thought, okay, well, how does that all play out? How does that work out? How does that compare? And I just did a couple of comparisons. It's an easy 10-minute read. You can get it off my Twitter profile. But in the end, at the time when I wrote the article, I want to say 2019, um, if you were to call it your fair share of Bitcoin, right, equally divided by everybody, 200 and some odd thousand sats, it was like $9 or $10 to get that amount. Then I said, well, what if
Wow.
Bitcoin was, $10,000? Well, it was maybe $100 then, or whatever it was. It was like easy numbers. Even at $1 million per Bitcoin, I think your fair share is like 2 grand. And I'm just like, man, if people only recognize that this is a land grab, right, for sats, and you could get them really cheap. And I even wrote stuff like, some people spend that much in beer every month. Like if you just diverted a little beer money, maybe you could have generational wealth or something. So I made it as clear as possible. Like Bitcoin is not only cheap, you can get a lot of it before everybody else hears about it. And it's scarce and it's likely to go up in value, and you really ought to look at this. So, I mean, I got a lot of good feedback on that, and it's there. And what I really was attempting to do too was to write an article that would not have to change with the times. It wasn't about current events, it wasn't about anything other than statistical numbers and I guess, tied to the likelihood Bitcoin's value is going to go up. And so you could read this article 20 years from now and nothing about it will be untrue. So I kind of like that. So should stand the test of time. My only real article I've ever written. So
Uh,
there you go.
it's really good, and it's a great read. And I'll link to it in here, and everyone should check it out because it's, again, like, as people go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. I mean, it just, you keep tapping into things. It keeps, like, changing your context, right? It keeps reframing things and how you see the world, and it really is
Oh
the
yeah,
process where you're
totally.
changing, right? So in a couple minutes, again, we'll talk about.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty interesting. The more you know, the more you realize you don't know, and then you're in the rabbit hole going down corridor after corridor. Like there's no end to all of them. You back out, you go down another corridor. It's like wow, this just never
It's
ends. It's
wild.
pretty wild.
In a minute, we will talk about some, a little bit of El Salvador and Bitcoiners in their own echo chamber. But I would like for you to talk about Bitcoin. You just mentioned a minute ago Bitcoin and not crypto, and the difference between the two. Like Anthony Pompliano just had a tweet earlier about some, like HR, crypto HR thing, handling companies and their stakeholders, and so he's getting shredded by Bitcoiners, and then he's crying about it and stuff. And I had tweeted it back, and I was just like, bro, like, the problems, like, and you have a huge platform, you have a huge following, and we need to build this world on monetary rock, and then you can play games, then you can talk about tokenization and all kind, whatever you want to do after that. why is it in your mind, like, why can't people see that we can't put this cart before the horse? We're constantly doing this and trying to recreate these fiat gains before we have the monetary rock and building a house, real estate on that monetary rock. Like, why is this, Jim? Like, why are we doing this all the time? It's mind blowing.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Pompliano's a grifter. He latches on to every, the narrative of the day. I saw a big tweet he put out about blockchain, and he clearly has no idea how Bitcoin actually works. So I skewered him. I responded to a couple of his tweets, and I wrote, "Still clueless, but at least you're consistent," stuff like that, because he's an idiot. I mean, he's not an idiot. He knows a lot of stuff, but he is not in it for Bitcoin, for black market freedom money. He's in it for fiat gains. He's in it for the popularity. He likes his notoriety, and he just he jumps on the whatever the bandwagon is of today. And it's sad because it's easy to do. There's always new people coming in, and they're easy to fool. There's too much information. There's way too much noise that's drowning out the real signal. And Anthony's part of the noise, unfortunately. And yet he'll go on CNBC and he'll promote just Bitcoin because that's the subject matter. And he looks like a Bitcoiner when you watch him there. But he's right. I mean, I've listened to many interviews, and he's in my opinion, truthfully answered relevant questions about Bitcoin
Right.
in the same way I might. But on his own podcast and his tweet threads and stuff like that, I'm a little surprised he hasn't blocked me by now, um, because I'm always pushing back on his grifting. Oddly enough, he kind of offered to interview me once because I told him I could teach him all
Oh,
about it, but it never happened. I think he was just playing with me or something. Whatever.
yeah.
We'll see. But anyway, I don't know if I answered your question correctly. Unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation, and it's up to people that understand it to straighten out that information. The idea of a proof of work blockchain that Bitcoin is has only one use, in my opinion. I like to summarize it by saying a proof of work blockchain does essentially two things. It creates within itself digital files. We call them coins, or in Bitcoin's case, we call them Bitcoins. It creates them and then it tracks them. And every single Bitcoin stays within the system. People talk about their Bitcoin on their hardware wallet. That's not how that works. Your Bitcoin is always within the system. It's just whether or not you have access to it through your wallet. And people just they don't understand the nuances of how that actually works or what it means. There's just a lot of that going on, unfortunately. And yeah, so I'm hoping that, for the people that are really curious and open-minded and are willing to change their opinion, if they talk to me long enough, I think I could teach them how this works. I don't think to go back for a second about that whole blockchain and why I push back against his tweet. There's a lot of rhetoric about this. The guy Larry Fink from BlackRock thinks they're going to tokenize the world, and literally there's zero reason to put things like stocks. This idea that you could put stuff on the blockchain is absurd because the protocol only allows for all the characteristics, the verifiability and the immutability within itself. It cannot do anything with the outside world. That's where you have to have a trusted third party to make the connection. And then you don't need a blockchain. You might as well have a database. And so Larry Fink is a bonehead. Pompliano is a bonehead. Anybody who thinks blockchain is the next big thing is an idiot bonehead. It's never going to happen. If it does, it's going to be fake and manipulated, and you're never going to get the immutable characteristics of Bitcoin. And it's the same thing with all the idiot ordinals people out there and the NFTs idiots that think you can do all this stuff on blockchain and all of a sudden you can own a JPEG. It blows my mind that so many people fall for this stuff, but they're out there. They don't know the technology. They don't take the time to learn it, and they're all trying to get rich quick, and most of them get scammed. And sadly, this is the worst part. There are plenty of people who know this, and they promote the idea that it is true because they are the scammers. Udi's one of them. David Bailey's another one. Eric Wall's another one. There's a lot of them out there. And they're getting away with it, and they're making tons of money because there's new people constantly coming in, and they're going to get taken because it's easy. It's like shooting fish in a barrel.
Wait, do you think like what because they have to know what Bitcoin is. Like you said with Pomp, I mean, he's a smart guy. Like he knows Bitcoin. Like, why is it just grifters are going to grift? Like they do know that the new system is available and it's there. If we just push forward, as Breitbart said, politics is downstream from culture. If we have enough people, a couple percent of the population says Bitcoin's the new standard, then guess what? Bitcoin's the new standard. And then all the wealth you could ever imagine, really for humanity, is there for the taking. Why is it that people just continually shuffle these deck chairs on the Titanic, like all these people you just mentioned? I don't get that at all.
The only thing I could think of is they're not getting rich enough quick enough, and they found a way to accumulate more fiat money, and then they may turn it into Bitcoin if they really realize. Honestly, with a guy like Pompliano, I bet you if you asked him technically how does the Bitcoin time chain work, I don't think he could tell you. I've never heard him describe it in any sort of. So I believe I could be wrong, but a lot of people have complimented me on this. I believe I can explain it how it technically works in layman's terms, and that is my whole reasoning for wanting to help teach this stuff because it is technically hard in many ways, but at the
Yep.
same time, um, you can take a technical subject and break it down and explain it to anybody, especially if you can use a good analogy or a metaphor that allows them to visualize something. And I've never heard Pompliano ever describe how Bitcoin works so people could understand it. No, he's just all about the hype cycles, the ICOs, all the crap we've been seeing for many years. I've only been in this space for I started studying a little over 8 years ago, so about 7 years full time, and it didn't take me long to figure it out. And as soon as I did, it was really clear where all the scammy stuff was because you just got to listen to people. You could tell they don't know what they're talking about. And they're just pumping some bags that they want to get rich, fiat rich. It's really sad, but it's human nature. It's to be expected. And when you have an open protocol like this, you can't stop people from doing stuff. That's one of the reasons why Bitcoin matters is because it's free and open source and no one can stop you from joining, and no one can kick you off. That's really important. But because it's free and open source, the only way anybody could trust it is the code had to be completely transparent, and that's what allowed a lot of people to go copy it and then tweak it a little and call it the better Bitcoin or Solana or whatever other crap. Even
Right.
Ethereum is the biggest joke, and Vitalik Buterin, he's another grifter. He should know
Yeah.
better. He seems smart enough, even though he's a little
Right.
strange to me, but whatever. I don't dislike the guy personally. I just think he's a liar, like so many other people. And he's made a shit ton of money. Can I say that? Sorry.
Yeah.
He's made a lot of money.
Yep.
He got in Bitcoin early. He's probably got a bunch of Bitcoin, but he also promoted ETH at a point where, he made a lot of money doing that. A lot, I say a lot of money. I even hate to use that term because what is money? There's lots of forms of what people think is money in this world, but real money is has the characteristics of Bitcoin. To me, Bitcoin is the only real money. Everything else is essentially fake money, but it's money. People value it. Value is subjective, and so if you want to value yen or pounds or dollars, people do, and they're able to buy and sell things using these inferior forms of money. But most people don't see Bitcoin as the ultimate money. They see it as a stepping stone to get more of whatever money they think is the money they should have. A lot of it's US dollars, but I think society will learn over a long enough period of time that this is the right answer. And I, I have a what's the right word? A hesitant. I'm hesitant to want to say this, but I feel like there's a high likelihood that Bitcoin might be inevitable. I, I, I used I actually did a talk that the title was Bitcoin is inevitable, but since that I've learned a lot more, and it could possibly break. I hate to even say that because I am a really big believer that Bitcoin's old enough and strong enough now that no one can stop it, and
Hmm.
so I can't see a way for it to break, but I don't know. And so I would like to think that it's inevitable in the sense that if it never stops, little by little by little, every single human being will recognize this is good for me. I say this all the time too. Bitcoin is incentivized for individuals, not groups. And so when I hear people wanting to encourage governments to acquire Bitcoin, I see no real direct value to the citizens in that regard. If you're going to take Bitcoin and back fiat currency with it, yeah, okay. I see the logic. The problem is you can verify all the Bitcoin. You can't verify all that's pegged to it. And so that
Right.
doesn't really fly. So I don't know. There's like this whole thing. There's so much, so many angles. There's so many side doors to go through to figure all this out. I'm just trying my best over here. I forget what the original question was. I hope I didn't go too off on a tangent
No,
there.
it was, yeah, no, it was brilliant. I mean, we started with just some of the Bitcoins, not crypto, right? And just the differences. And you had a great explanation of grifters, and why they might grift, because it's something I've been thinking about for a
Yeah,
while, but you really hit it with, whether it's they just want to scam because they want more fiat, or maybe they're scamming people to get more Bitcoin, that there could be multiple explanations or
yeah,
both, or there could be many all at once at play.
yeah.
So really, really well said. What,
Oh, thanks.
what do you think the biggest like at this point? I feel like there's a lot of Bitcoiners that are kind of like, how do people not see this? We all forget our own story, right? And us getting over that hurdle.
Yeah,
But with inflation and lockdowns and Russia, assets getting frozen. Well, shouldn't say assets, dollar liabilities, like all these things getting frozen. Like, how do people at this point, the last 4 years, how is 50% of the world not seeing Bitcoin for what it is? What are Jim's thoughts on why we're still such little real adoption, I guess, at this point?
television. They're all slaves to the man on the TV. They just do what he says. Honestly, it's the propaganda, it's the indoctrination of years and years of believing the government's looking out for you, believing Anthony Fauci wants you to stay alive and healthy. I mean, this is so much
Yep.
insanity that's pushed out through the idiot box in the living room. And people, look, I spent most of my life with a television and believing much of what I saw on it. Unfortunately, well, or fortunately for me, I finally woke up. I haven't owned a TV in probably at least 5 years. And I have no interest to anything that's on there because I don't believe any of it's in our best interest. It's in the best interest of the advertisers and the media people and, whatever, they're making their profits. They'll tell you whatever they need to do if they can make profits. And that's really sad. There's a high lack of integrity in media, politics, and a lot of the corporate world, because when you're in those realms with and you're high enough up, you have access to advantages other people don't have. And I'm trying to say this as generically as possible, but if you want to play at that level, that's what it is. You have to play a game that was built before you got there, and a lot of it requires you to compromise your integrity,
Very true.
unfortunately. And I wouldn't be surprised if most politicians and a lot of business leaders get lured into compromising themselves in various ways, including going visiting Epstein Island, right? Which we'll probably never see because half the FBI probably went there, and they're going to implicate themselves if they let us see, his diary or whatever. I mean, it's just such a joke. And yeah, it's hard to find the truth. It's really hard to find the truth. And when you hear about magic internet money and it fixes the world, you go like, yeah, right. You guys are nuts. So it's I don't know. I don't know what else to do. I will say this though. I've said this for quite a while. I don't know if I'll be right. It may play out way longer than this, or I may not get to see it. But I think the hyper Bitcoinization or Bitcoin being a predominant world currency is a two generational thing from where we are. That is, a lot of the existing older generation, actually people in my age category, boomers and older, that many of them still control a lot of the wealth and narratives and businesses and politics in this world. They got to die. They're going to die anyway. But it's when they die and their philosophy and their influence goes away that it can be replaced by somebody new. And in the middle, you'll have a bunch of people that don't know where to go, younger politicians that are falling for, their older counterparts, what they tell them, or becoming so entrenched, becoming compromised that they have to continue to toe the bullshit line that they're being told. But then you're going to have a generation of young kids growing up in Bitcoin families with solid parents that are going to homeschool and they're going to teach them the truth. And that can't be stopped. And with a long enough period of time, I think humanity heals. I think the world heals. I think wars go away. I think governments shrink down to the most localist level, and communities the world over begin to trade in love and cooperation. And I hope I get to see that world. And if not me, maybe my heirs will get to see it. But if I can help bring that about, then I'll think that my life was totally well worth living, and I'll consider it the reason I was meant to be here, maybe. So we'll see.
I couldn't agree more. That's why we're talking offline. I mean, I always resonate with what you say because I could not agree more. Do you think the only pushback that when you talk like that, I get this pushback is I'll talk a similar way, and the pushback I'll get is, that's a pretty optimistic, that's a pretty, utopian view. Like, you think humans are just going to change and this and that and blah blah. People tend to be more cynical, right? Maybe entrepreneurs tend to be more optimistic, more idealistic, maybe. I mean, do you think that there's something to that? Or, I mean, I think we're right, but is there something that we're missing? Like, have you gone down those rabbit holes of like, hey, what am I missing? I'm sure you have. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think so. I think I said this a minute ago. Bitcoin is optimized or is incentivized for individuals and not groups. So governments holding Bitcoin, unless they spend it on their citizens, the citizens don't benefit by that group of people controlling Bitcoin. But people controlling their own Bitcoin, essentially their own money, and being able to do it in a sovereign way, not having it be confiscatable by some government, that that changes. So two things: the feeling of sovereignty is really powerful, but the understanding that there's a limited supply and you can't get any more without providing some value to somebody else who has to voluntarily give you that money, that changes the game dramatically. So if you're a politician, you're a central banker, and you don't have the ability to just make money or or manipulate markets with magic words on paper that give benefits to one corporation over another, because because a lot of money is going to go to them, and they're going to finance your next campaign. Well, the incentives at every level change. The people who are paying for campaigns, they're not going to want to spend their Bitcoin unless they're really sure of the candidate and the process. The candidates having to collect Bitcoin for their campaign, they're not going to just want to waste it. They're going to be very selective where they spend it. Every single individual is going to lower their time preference, and cheap Chinese crap is going to disappear. And you're going to see high quality everything, because nobody's going to buy junk anymore. Or at least if they do, they know they're buying junk and it's temporary. And maybe there'll be a small portion of society that still, wastes their money because they're stupid, whatever. But when when the when the monetary units are restricted and the only thing that can change is its value, um, people are going to treat it differently and they're going to act differently. And I honestly think, well, I've seen it in my own life and I've seen it in every Bitcoiner I know. Everybody is changed by Bitcoin. You are changed in many ways, but the other thing I've noticed is, and I know this for myself, is I've always been a Bitcoiner, and then I found Bitcoin, and I knew I had to align with it because it aligns with my values. It aligns with honesty and integrity and truth. And a lot of people want to live that way, and they find it hard in a fiat world that cheats all around them. And it's very easy to join and cheat because everybody else is doing it. I mean, it's everywhere. And then if you're cheating along with the other people who are also cheating, you're accepted. You're all pals. But how is your heart? How is your integrity? How is your relationship with God if you believe in that kind of stuff? And so I think when there is no way to have that fake monetary system and manipulate people through the creation and distribution of money, I think everybody's incentive at every level changes, and collectively society just heals. Now, there's a lot of ways you can, evaluate at what ways, how fast, what directions. I just think it starts with every individual one at a time, and when enough individuals are in the same place at the same time, collectively as groups, they can make changes. And so I feel like the Bitcoin revolution is a ground up revolution. It's not going to start at governments. Governments accumulating Bitcoin are not going to fix the world. Individuals accumulating Bitcoin are going to grow up and fix government and fix industry. And that's why I say it's going to take a couple generations, depending on how long you count a generation. That could be 30 to 50 years, 60 years. I don't know what's an average generation necessarily, but it could be quite a ways off. By then, the value of Bitcoin could be worth, $1 billion, and uh, that's going to change the game. But it's certainly going to send a signal to anybody out there who hasn't been paying attention yet. This is the money everybody else wants to use, and at some point, no one's going to take fiat money for it anymore. They're only going to take goods and services, and that's the world where Bitcoin is really has won. So hopefully I get to see
Yep.
it, but if I don't, I'm still going to fight for it.
Love it. Well said. Turning towards El Salvador. So you were just there, and you set off a little firestorm on on Twitter or X, what do you want to call
Little?
it? And you're breaking everyone's echo chambers, and that's where I want to kind of touch on that with you and this importance of continually checking ourselves and living up to the memes, living up to our own adages and what we preach. And we're human, so we can tend to get in these echo chambers. But how important is it to continually check these echo chambers and the mental frameworks that you operate by? And again, we talked about your frameworks and how you've lived your entire life. And like you just said, you were a Bitcoiner before there was even a Bitcoin, right? And you just aligned, and that's why Bitcoin became just inevitable for you. Why is it so important to continually check yourself and your echo chambers and question things when it could be anything? Leaders you're following, people that you're keeping friends with or company with. Could you elaborate on some of this, please?
Yes, I was in El Salvador at the Halving party, and I got my little water bottle here. I'm going to take a sip. And I just have to say, that was an incredible event. The Meme Factory, Big Sean Harris, did such an incredible job. The people that went were awesome, solid Bitcoiners. And you mentioned, I don't know the words you used. I started a shitstorm on Twitter about El Salvador. Um, I went down there. I really enjoyed myself. I loved El Salvador. I loved the people. I loved the energy down there. But there's a lot of fake narratives going on around that country, and I pushed back on a tweet that I saw from the president, and that kind of kicked it off because it's um, portrayed as utopia down there. Everything's fixed because Bitcoin, and it's not. The government. What's a government? Government is just other people. That's it. They shit themselves in diapers just like me and you. Now they have control of vast amounts of resources and armies to point guns at us. They're just other people. Probably am no longer friends with. He probably doesn't like me because I pushed back on him. There's a video of him screaming like he loves to do about how free everybody is in El Salvador, which is incredibly so far from the truth. Insanely so far from the truth. I had to push back. I've been on Twitter today probably 5, 6 hours responding to the insane amounts of responses I got. How El Salvador is so much better because of Bitcoin. No, El Salvador is better because a man who decided he likes Bitcoin cracked down in an authoritarian way and threw anybody with a tattoo on their face in jail. And I'm going to guess statistically there's a couple people that are innocent. And that doesn't fly with me.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, you can always say, well, look at the results. They justify the actions. Yeah, well, maybe less people are dying, they say. Okay, fine. That's a good result. I get it. But you can't sweep up innocent people and destroy their lives in the process. That's not fair to me. I don't think it's right, and I certainly don't think it's any law that allows for that. But he literally just was playing dictator and just decided. And so a lot of people love him for that. And if I was a El Salvadorian afraid of gangs, I'd probably love him too. I'm already living under his regime. He's already stealing my money through taxation. So he's already my enemy technically, but he fixed the country a little, so he's made my life a little easier. Okay, so I like him a little. I get it. I get it. He looks like a good guy, but he's still a politician. I don't believe he's in charge. El Salvador's not a big enough country with enough wealth. If he's going to get along with the rest of the world, he's going to have to bow down to greater powers than him. And what started it for me was his tweet about he's going to bring 5,000 real smart people, top of the top, best of the best engineers, whoever, and he's going to give them a free pass. No taxes, come in, bring your knowledge and your wealth to our country, and we'll hook you up. And I just thought, damn, just screw your own citizens, keep stealing their money, and give a break to a total stranger. Because why? Because he's bringing wealth to your country, he's making you look good. There is so much in it for me versus in it for everybody else that politicians do that I don't trust them one bit. And don't think for a second that one of those people out there in the world that wants to be among those 5,000 who's got some credentials but maybe doesn't meet whatever standards they decide have to be met, but he's really rich. I don't think for a moment that some people's status changes mysteriously when large contributions show up in personal bank accounts in just the right places. I mean, come on. You could pay for anything in this world. So are they going to let in 5,000 really deserving people? And who judges who's that out of 8 billion? Who really makes that judgment? Him and his cronies in the government, right? I don't know the full story, but apparently one of the government officials that pushed back against corruption mysteriously died in jail recently. Boy, that doesn't look good. That looks like super authoritarian, whatever, murder your rivals in jail so they don't expose your corruption. So I am just so suspect of all this stuff, and there's way, way, way too many Bitcoiners that are in love with the president or whatever. I mean, they're just people. They should not be put up on such a high pedestal. And so many people seem to be trusting and not verifying, and it's kind of sad for Bitcoiners. But I'm recognizing what's going on here. Um, Bitcoin was born out of the cypherpunk revolution. These are people who hate government, who push back constantly, and were looking for ways to thwart their efforts. And Satoshi discovered a combination of technologies that might do it, and he gave it to the world. And the people who got the early Bitcoiners, many of them understood that, but many of them didn't. But I was educated around Bitcoin with that ethos that this is free market money meant to equalize the playing field. And way too many Bitcoiners right now either haven't heard that or don't get that, don't get it at a deep enough level to recognize where it's being compromised. And it's being compromised all over the place, especially when I hear Bitcoiners cheering for governments to adopt Bitcoin because it's going to fix things. There's no chance the U.S. government adopting Bitcoin is going to change anything in this country. And I don't believe it's going to do anything for El Salvador either. About the best it could do is change the incentives and the actions of people that might make a place better. I'll say it again. I'll say it forever. Until a government spends the Bitcoin on its citizens, the citizens gain nothing. Nothing. I don't see. Tell me how they gain. If you and me and 10 other people get a bunch of Bitcoin, how does anybody who doesn't have control of that Bitcoin benefit because we have it? They don't. They don't unless we give it to them or spend it on them. They get nothing out of it. So there's zero reason to incentivize governments to hold Bitcoin. Zero, in my opinion. Unless you're going to peg currencies to it. But again, I said earlier, you can't. There's too many fiat units, and they can still make more without telling anybody. So that's a joke, right? You can't peg money back, any fiat money back to gold like some gold bugs would have you believe. None of that's ever coming back. The only way this world heals is if Bitcoin is the only money. And that's a couple generations at minimum away, unfortunately, but that's my perspective. Maybe history will prove me wrong. I have not heard a single person give me a reasonable argument as to why, when governments hold Bitcoin, the citizens benefit. Because nobody could think of one, because I don't believe one exists. So it's out there. Anybody hears this, push back. Show me how a group of people that call themselves government owning Bitcoin benefits the citizens they're supposed to represent. I don't believe it exists.
Yeah. I I agree with you. I the only thing I can think of is the tax thing, right? Like you don't have to give up your Bitcoin by to the government if you're doing something. Maybe the capital gains part of it, but that's I don't know. But like you're right, it's bottom up, and you hit the nail on the head a little bit ago. It's a bottom up that it has to happen. Top down is what government does. You know, the bottom up is how the
Yeah,
culture changes through the people. So yeah, I couldn't
yeah,
agree more. So just change your culture, but also checking yourself, continually checking yourself, breaking your echo chambers, slaying your heroes, right? We just get
yeah.
so like so focused on like a person or two or a hero or two. So yeah, well said, well said. Checking yourself constantly. So
Thank you.
in wrapping here a little bit, Bitcoin trading cards. We got a new
Ah,
here in a second, word association, but how you Surfer Jim is going to be on some flipping Bitcoin trading cards here at BitBlock Boom coming up this week. They're dropping this week. Wild, wild. Probably for rants like you.
yeah. Tell me about
Yeah,
it.
that's why.
It's surreal, bro. It's surreal from my end. Like I'm gonna be on a trading card. How did that happen? It's crazy, crazy.
Bitcoin Trading Cards is a pretty red pilled or orange pilled organization. Let's just say that. So Aladdin at the top leading it, and that's why Surfer Jim's in it. So and so a testament to you. And again, what you just talked about, honestly, Jim. I mean, like the stuff you just went through is not easy to say for a lot of Bitcoiners. A lot of them haven't thought about it. A lot of them haven't talked about it. Some don't even know,
Yeah,
quite honestly. But it's constantly checking yourself, and just saying and thinking, hey, am I going the right direction? Are we going the right direction? What are we doing here? So that's the moral of that whole story. It's we don't know all the answers. None of us know all the answers, but it's just doing your homework.
true.
Like you said earlier, trust but verify, right? Don't trust me. Go verify. Go do your research. So just so well said. In saying that,
Hey, listen, I want to just say
yeah,
something as to why I'm willing to be so toxic and take a position like this. Because I'm old, kind of. I mean, I feel like I got plenty of years left. I think, honestly, I've had relatives live to almost 100 and several of them. And so I got 30, maybe even 40 or more years. So I got plenty of time that I can enjoy this life and perhaps do a lot of good. But I've already lived 63 years on this planet and I've seen a lot of stuff. And I'm at this point where, I don't really give a shit anymore. I don't give a shit if you don't like me or if you don't believe me. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. I'm trying not to get myself in trouble and thrown in jail by somebody who doesn't agree. But if somebody I admired decides they don't like me anymore because they don't agree with my position, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. They don't make my life. The people really close to me make my life, and those are the people I really care about. So I care about Bitcoin, I care about humanity generally, and I care about doing something on this planet that helps push love and goodness and fairness in the world if I can in any way. And I feel like, wow, I got this opportunity through this thing called Bitcoin to actually maybe make a difference on this planet. Wow, that's pretty amazing. I never thought I'd make much of a difference. I make a difference in the lives of the people I work for. I build beautiful homes, I renovate stuff. I mean, my customers seem to like me a lot. They keep hiring me. And so it's not like I've done nothing on this planet, but it's a very small scale, very localized. I now have friends all over the world. It blows my mind. People from all over the world have heard me speak. Incredible. Like that blows my mind more than anybody. There's people all over the world that have heard of me. I'm like, what? But it's because of the internet. It's because of podcasts. It's because somebody else wanted to hear me talk and
wow,
like you're doing today, and
yeah.
and it goes out there. And I'm like, wow, I never thought I'd have any influence like this. And here I am. I guess I can potentially influence somebody's future
Yes.
if they maybe pay attention and do the verification, right? So like, okay, well that's kind of a cool thought. So I'm just going to keep doing that for a while and see where that leads me. Oh, and I'll tell you what, I'm blown away.
So cool.
It led me to an opportunity in Bitcoin. Um, I was really impressed when I heard Peter Dunworth talk about his perspective on Bitcoin, but also what he's doing with a business he created called the Bitcoin Advisor. He's based out of Australia. And so I found his Twitter feed and I noticed he was already following me. I didn't even, at the time, didn't even know who he was, but I thought he was really smart. And I was like, wow, this guy's following me. Okay, that's cool. I'm going to follow him back. And like within 2 minutes, he saw that I followed him back and he DM'd me, yo, bro, thanks for following me back. I've been a fan for a while. And I'm like, holy shit. And that kind of stuff also blows my mind. It's very, very heartwarming. It's really amazing the love that I've gotten back from people. So I said, "Hey, I'm going to Pacific Bitcoin. Are you going to be there?" And he was, "Yeah, yeah, this is great. Let's meet. Let's hang out." We got to hang out a bunch of times, and both of us, it was our last night there, and we went out to dinner. And he didn't know this, and most people don't know this about me. But when I was in my 20s, I worked in the financial services industry. I had a securities license. I worked for a company that did a lot of business planning. We set up pension plans for people, employee benefit plans. We sold a lot of insurance and annuities, and um, we and because of that, we ended up doing and advising a lot of people on personal estate planning. And so at the Bitcoin Advisor, a little bit of shill for the company I'm now helping to represent. What we do is our goal is to get people's Bitcoin off exchanges and get it in the most secure custody way possible so that they can always have it and it will pass properly to their heirs. That is that last part is critical. A lot of people own Bitcoin, they know how to secure it, and it may not get to their heirs. And I'm not going to get into all the ways that that happens, but there are potentially a lot of ways. And so one of the key things that we really focus on and try to help our clients implement is a proper estate plan that accounts for the Bitcoin that they have in a way that upon their passing, it will move to their heirs, whoever they want, flawlessly, without the state getting in the way or anybody else getting in the way. And there is mechanisms that allow this to work really well. And I think we're the leader in this personally right now in the Bitcoin ecosystem. There are other people that do and what we're doing is we're helping people set their Bitcoin up in collaborative custody multisig. And we're not the only ones that do it. But our approach with our estate planning coordination is definitely the only one I'm aware of that's really trying to help the individual make sure that their family gets their Bitcoin if something should happen to them, especially unexpectedly. And it's a touchy subject. People don't not want to talk about dying, and they certainly don't want to talk about all the effort it takes to do a proper estate plan. But folks, if you're listening to me right now, if you don't even have at least a simple will, you pass away, the government's going to decide who gets your stuff, and that's the last person you want. You got to go to what is it called? The court for
Oh, probate.
estates. I forget
Yeah,
what it's called, but
probate court.
it's not. That's the one. Thank you. That's not where you want your family to have to go to decide to. Oh, and you know what they get to do? Because they're now in charge, they get to take a piece of your estate as a fee, right? So it's really horrible. If you do it correctly, you can have 100% of your assets passed to, your wife, your kids, whoever matters to you. But you have to take the time to do it because here's the thing. The Bitcoin protocol does not recognize court orders or anything else. And you have to deal with settling an estate in the real world. So there's the connection between real world assets and the Bitcoin network and the protocol. And unfortunately, the protocol only responds to valid signed transactions, like at its base. And nothing outside the protocol can force the protocol to move the Bitcoin to wherever some judge says to go without the proper authority, which means you have to have control of the private keys. And then you have to, some human being, this is again, you're outside the protocol. Some human being has to act. They have to
Yes.
sign a message. The Bitcoin then moves on the protocol to the new address, and now somebody else controls it, hopefully the person you wanted to. And so a lot of people don't think about that part. The fact that the real world is involved when you pass your Bitcoin to somebody else, and you have to know what they're going to do if you don't take action yourself. And you can, and you could fix it. You can make it work perfect if you take the time to set it up, and that's what we're helping people to do. So I'm still kind of pinching myself because for a long time I thought I would love to be in Bitcoin and I would love for my job to be just education, just talk, explain things, and make some money maybe. And in my real world, I have tools, I have workers, I have insurances, I have suppliers, and there's so many moving parts. And in my Bitcoin job that I have now, I literally just have to talk. I have to have my brain working. Hopefully that keeps going. But I could be anywhere. I don't have to have workers' comp or liability insurance. I mean, it changes the game like in an amazing amount of ways, I should say. And yeah, I am just kind of feeling pretty blessed that I not only found Bitcoin, I found so many awesome, awesome people in Bitcoin. And then a really cool guy from Australia gave me an opportunity to help really orange pill some people and maybe help them secure generational wealth that they want to do because we have a really great system to do it. So yeah, thanks for letting me shill the company. I hope everybody books a call with me after they hear this, and let's get you set up so your family gets your Bitcoin one day. Because if you believe in generational wealth, then you better make sure you do it right because the state is not going to do what you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, last thing here, and we'll link to this stuff below as well. And obviously, as people can tell, you're a wealth of knowledge, so they would be smart to set up a time to talk to you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Absolutely. A little word association game presented by Bitcoin Trading Cards. So I'm going to say got like a dozen words or
Oh,
so, and I want you to just, kind of lightning round, go through them,
okay.
and what comes to your mind, and we'll rock through them here. Freedom.
Okay. Do it. Elusive.
Ooh. Satoshi Nakamoto.
Brilliant.
Community.
Love.
Bitcoin conferences.
Hmm. I, mean, I get to meet my extended Bitcoin family. I couldn't do that in one word.
I love it. That's perfect. Uh, Bitcoin maximalism or freedom maximalism?
Siding with the truth.
Love it. Voluntarism.
Worth it.
Surfing.
Aligning with nature's energy.
Mm. Citadel.
Hopefully a safe place.
Family.
That's where it all starts. Very important.
First principles.
Unavoidable. They're everywhere. If you don't align with them, you're screwed.
Ooh, I like that. Carnivore diet.
The healthiest diet on the planet.
Altcoins.
Dirt. Garbage.
Building. Construction.
Um, hmm. Creativity, expression, shelter, home. It's a lot of things. When you build a nice place for somebody, it brings a lot.
That's so cool. Bitcoin trading cards.
Oh wow, that's a new one for me, boy. I was never a trading card person, but I'm really getting into it now. I mean, how can I not? They made one of me. But I'm loving this is a much longer answer, but I'm loving the community around this whole thing. I was never much of a collector, but I really love the energy of the people in that space. And I actually inadvertently decided I'll just grab some packs of cards here and there from the different conferences I went to, and I now have some scarce ones, but I've never opened any of them. So I've got the unopened packs from like Pacific Bitcoin and a couple others, and apparently they're worth a good amount of money. But
Yeah.
I'm not in it for that. I just
Right.
love the idea of being sort of part of the family, maybe. Yeah. So that's a yeah. That was you got me with that one. I need to really think, so I had to use a lot more words than
Yeah,
just
I
one
love
or
it.
two.
I love it. And lastly, the Bitcoin advisor.
Oh, pioneers, man, we are going to set the standard for how to take care of your Bitcoin and not lose it. And I think we are pioneering an industry here, and I'm really excited about it. Thank you.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for your time, Jim, and the time earlier, us troubleshooting things. Where can people find you?
Oh, that was fun. Easiest place is on Twitter, Surfer Jim W on Twitter, and you can now email me directly, surferjim at the Bitcoin Advisor. That's advisor with an ER at the end. If you're really interested in what we do, you can book a meeting on my calendar. I'm happy to talk with you about that and tell all your friends what we're doing, and learn what we're doing. Don't trust, verify, like I always say. But I think if you look into what we're doing, you'll find that we offer a really great service, and we're going to help a lot of people protect their Bitcoin. So I'm really motivated for that, and I feel like it's a noble occupation to be in. So I'm really happy I found something that I could really stand behind. The product we sell, everybody needs essentially. So I feel really good about that. So thank you.
Noble's a great word, and you've got a lot of fine people working there and what you guys are doing. So I absolutely
Yeah.
love what you're doing.
Dude, we got an amazing crew,
Yeah,
and they keep adding superstars to the lineup. It's incredible. Every week they add more advisors from all over the world. I mean, we're growing by leaps and bounds, and we are getting a ridiculous amount of people calling us and saying, "I got to know more." And so
cool.
it's happening. They need it. So it's really great. It couldn't be
That's the best.
more in alignment with who I am. I don't want to go out there and shill a bunch of crap. I don't want to be looked at as some salesman dude. I'd rather be looked at
Right.
as an educator, and I'm trying to be that. And the role that I have with the Bitcoin Advisor fits perfectly because I never have to try. I just answer their questions, and they all go, "Oh, wow, oh, cool, oh, yeah." A lot of those moments where that light bulb moments where people are like, "Oh, I didn't see it that way." Okay, cool. So I'm just loving it. I really it couldn't be more perfect for me. So I really appreciate,
So
dude. I really appreciate this. I told you this before we went live. I think you do a great podcast. I never expected you'd invite me on. I don't think much about that stuff, and then here we are today doing it, and I'm really like I'm honored. I'm honored that you would ask me to come. Thank you, really, so much. It's been
absolutely.
great.
You're a wealth of knowledge, and I look up to you, the wisdom you have, and as many do. I mean, shoot, you got what 20,000 people that I think the same way on Twitter alone, on X alone. So appreciate you. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you for checking out this episode of the Playable Characters Show, brought to you by Bitcoin Trading Cards. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of the future Bitcoin and financial experts we have on the show. Plus, we will be doing random big giveaways throughout different moments of shows of collectible cards, sats, merch, and more from guests, so you won't miss anything. This show does not constitute any investment advice, only freedom advice. Everything you see here is opinions from the host and the guests themselves, nothing further. Please don't trust, verify. For full transparency, I do lead marketing efforts at Bitcoin Trading Cards where we are trying to spread freedom to all of humanity and orange pill the world, one collectible physical trading card at a time, by making things fun and easy to talk about that normally make you want to cry. You can reach me directly through my email, brandon@btc-cards.com, with any inquiries or playable character suggestions. See you on the next one.